The night it happened felt ordinary in every possible way. That's what still scares me the most. It was late evening. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after dinner when the dishes are done and the TV is off. I was halfway up the stairs, carrying a small basket of laundry against my chest, thinking about nothing more than folding clothes before bed. Then everything changed. I felt a sudden force against my back. Not a slip, not a stumble, hands. Strong. Deliberate hands that shoved me forward with no warning. The world tilted, and my feet left the steps beneath me. The basket flew from my arms as I crashed downward. My body hitting wood again and again. My shoulder slammed first, then my ribs. I tried to grab the railing, but my fingers found only air. The sound was unbearable. Bones against hardwood, breath ripped from my lungs. By the time my body hit the bottom, I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. The pain locked me in place, sharp and blinding. Like my chest was being crushed from the inside. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, gasping for air that wouldn't come. At the top of the stairs, a shadow moved. I saw her. My mother-in-law. Linda stood perfectly still, one hand resting lightly on the banister. Her face wasn't shocked. It wasn't scared. It was calm, almost satisfied. For a brief moment, our eyes met. She didn't say a word. She didn't rush to help. She simply watched. Then everything faded to black. When I woke up, bright lights burned my eyes. Machines beeped softly around me. Every breath felt like a knife slicing through my ribs. My wrist throbbed, and my whole body felt heavy. Like I was trapped underwater. I was in the emergency room. Mark was sitting beside my bed, gripping my hand so tightly it hurt. His face looked worried. But something about it felt rehearsed. Like he was playing a role. It was just an accident. He said quickly, almost too quickly. You must have tripped. Before I could answer, Linda stepped closer. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup flawless. She placed a gentle hand on Mark's shoulder and smiled at the nurse. She's always been clumsy, she said softly. I keep telling her to be more careful. The nurse nodded, typing into a tablet. I wanted to scream instead. I stared at the ceiling, trying to understand how reality had twisted so fast. My chest was wrapped tightly. I could barely breathe. The doctor explained my injuries. 3 cracked ribs, a sprained wrist, deep bruises that would take weeks to heal. But the worst injury wasn't physical. It was the realization that no one was listening to me. Linda spoke for me. Mark finished my sentences. Every attempt I made to speak was gently interrupted. You're in shock, Mark said. Let's not confuse things, Linda added. As they stood there side by side, something settled deep in my stomach. This wasn't just about a fall. This was about control. As the nurse adjusted my IV, Linda leaned closer and whispered, "Next time, be more careful on the stairs." Her voice was sweet. Her eyes were not. In that moment, lying broken in a hospital bed, I understood something terrifying. The fall wasn't the beginning. It was the warning. After the hospital discharged me, Mark insisted I come home. He said it gently, like he was doing me a favor, but something in his voice made my stomach tighten. Our house didn't feel like home anymore. Every step inside reminded me of the stairs. The walls felt closer, the air heavier. Linda had already been there. I knew because things were moved. A picture frame on the hallway table was crooked. The fruit bowl in the kitchen was in the wrong place. She had a key. Mark had given it to her years ago without asking me. Whenever I brought it up, he said I was overreacting. She's family, he always said. Now I understood what that key really meant. I slept on the couch that night because I couldn't face the stairs. Every creak made my heart jump. Mark lay awake in the bedroom, checking on me every hour. At least, that's what he said. But his questions felt strange. Do you remember exactly how you felt? Are you sure you didn't feel dizzy? Pain medication can mess with memory, you know. Each question landed like a warning. Linda started visiting daily. She brought soup I didn't ask for. Rearranged my kitchen, to help. She spoke softly, but her words cut deep. You should rest more. You're so sensitive lately. You don't want people thinking you're unstable. When I tried to tell Mark how uncomfortable I felt, he sighed. She's just worried about you. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment of the fall again and again. The push. The look on her face. The way she didn't rush to help. And then I remembered something important. 2 months earlier, after my jewelry had gone missing, I had installed security cameras inside the house. One in the living room, one near the back door, and one at the top of the stairs. I hadn't told Mark. At the time, I felt slightly guilty, like I was being paranoid. Mark had laughed when I accused someone of taking my things. "You're always misplacing stuff," he'd said. But deep down, I knew better. The thought of the cameras made my heart race. If they had recorded what happened, everything would change. But I was afraid. Afraid of what I'd see. Afraid of what it would mean. The next morning, a nurse from the hospital called to check on me. She asked how I was feeling and whether I felt safe at home. The question caught me off guard. I hesitated. Then I said quietly, "I don't think my fall was an accident." There was a pause on the line. She told me something that sent chills down my spine. "My job requires me to say this," she said carefully, "but your injuries don't fully match a simple fall. If someone hurt you, you need to tell someone." After the call, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the staircase. Sunlight spilled across the steps, making them look harmless, almost beautiful. But I knew better. That afternoon Linda came over again. She smiled when she saw me watching the stairs. "You should really stop thinking about it," she said. "Dwelling on things like this isn't healthy." Her eyes flicked toward the corner of the ceiling. Toward the camera. For the first time, I wondered something terrifying. What if she knew? That night, while Mark was in the shower, I quietly opened the security app on my phone. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. The footage loaded slowly. I didn't press play yet, because once I did there would be no going back. And somewhere deep inside, I already knew, the house wasn't silent. It was waiting. I waited until the house was completely quiet. Mark had fallen asleep in the bedroom. The sound of the shower still echoing faintly in the hallway. Linda had finally left for the night, reminding me twice to take my medication and rest my mind. I sat alone on the couch, my phone glowing in the darkness. My hands were shaking so badly I had to steady them against my knee. For a long time, I didn't touch the screen. Because once I watched the footage, there would be no more doubts. No more excuses. The truth would be clear, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I took a deep breath and pressed play. The video showed the top of the staircase, quiet and still. The timestamp confirmed the exact moment I had fallen. I watched myself enter the frame, carrying the laundry basket, moving slowly because my arms were full. Then Linda appeared. She stepped into view from the hallway. Her face tight, her jaw clenched. There was no surprise in her expression. No confusion. She moved toward me with purpose. My stomach turned. I watched her hands reach out. The push was sudden and violent. I screamed as my body flew forward, the basket tumbling away as I disappeared from the frame. The sound of my body hitting the steps echoed through the room I was sitting in now. Hearing it again made me gasp for air. But the video didn't end there. Linda stood at the top of the stairs looking down. She didn't run. She didn't shout my name. She didn't call for help. She adjusted her sweater. She checked her watch. Then she turned and walked calmly into the kitchen. I felt sick. The camera switched to another angle. I watched her fill the kettle with water, set it on the stove, wait. She made herself tea. 15 minutes passed. 15 minutes where I lay broken at the bottom of the stairs, unable to move, struggling to breathe, while she sipped her drink like nothing had happened. Finally, she picked up her phone. Only then did she call Mark. I dropped my phone onto the couch, my chest tight, tears streaming down my face. The pain in my ribs felt sharper than ever, as if my body remembered what my mind was trying to forget. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. I had been pushed. The next morning I didn't confront Mark. Not yet. Instead, I went back to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. The same nurse who had treated me on the night of the fall recognized me immediately. She noticed my shaking hands. "You watched it, didn't you?" she asked quietly. I nodded and showed her the footage. Her face drained of color. "This isn't an accident," she said firmly. "This is attempted murder." She left the room and returned with a supervisor. Then security, then the police. I sat on the exam table, my phone clutched in my hand. As officers watched the footage again and again. One of them paused it at the exact moment Linda's hands connected with my back. "You're very lucky to be alive," he said. When they went to speak with Mark, I listened from behind a thin hospital curtain. "This is a misunderstanding," Mark insisted. "My wife has been stressed. She's been confused." Then they showed him the video. The room went silent. I peeked through the curtain and saw his face change, confusion melting into fear. That's my mother," he whispered. "Yes," the officer replied. "And she waited before calling for help." Mark didn't answer. For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing to say. As the police stepped out to make calls, I realized something important. The footage didn't just expose Linda. It exposed the lies I had been living with for years. And now that the truth was out, there was no way back. The cameras had spoken. And they weren't done yet. Once the police became involved, everything moved faster than I expected. Officers escorted Linda out of the hospital for questioning. She didn't scream or cry. She looked offended, like she was the victim of some terrible misunderstanding. Mark followed them, confused and angry, demanding answers. I stayed behind, sitting alone in a small hospital room, staring at the blank walls. For the first time, no one was speaking for me. That silence felt strange, but also freeing. Later that day, a detective named Alvarez came to see me. She was calm, direct, and didn't sugarcoat her words. "We reviewed the footage," she said. "And there's more." My heart dropped. She explained that Linda had waited 15 minutes before calling for help. Medical experts confirmed that delay could have killed me. That alone was serious enough to change the entire case. But that wasn't all. The police had obtained a search warrant for Linda's house. When Detective Alvarez returned the next day, she brought photos with her. She spread them across the table slowly, letting me take them in. My breath caught in my throat. There were my missing things. The gold bracelet my grandmother gave me. The earrings I thought I'd lost during a move. Even the necklace I wore on my wedding day. Linda had taken them all. For years, she had smiled and told Mark I was careless. That I misplaced things. That I imagined problems. The truth was sitting right in front of me. "She's been stealing from you," the detective said gently. "For a long time." Then she showed me something else. A printed copy of text messages. Between Linda and Mark. My hands started shaking as I read them. "She's becoming difficult. She's not good enough for you. She needs to be handled before things get worse." I felt like I couldn't breathe. Mark had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. The detective's voice softened. "There's something else you should know." She told me about Mark's first wife. Her name was Sarah. 5 years earlier, Sarah had fallen down the same staircase. She survived, but left immediately after. She divorced Mark and disappeared from his life. At the time, it was labeled an accident. Now the police weren't so sure. They contacted Sarah. She agreed to speak. When I met her, she looked nervous but determined. She told me how Linda had controlled every part of her life. How Mark never defended her. How, after the fall, he told everyone she was confused and unstable. The same words, "I knew if I stayed," Sarah said quietly, "I would die in that house." The pieces finally fit together. This wasn't a single act of rage, it was a pattern. When Mark came to see me later that evening, he looked broken. His voice shook as he begged me to drop the charges. "She needs help," he said. "She's my mother." I looked at him and felt nothing. "You watched her destroy my life," I said calmly. "And you helped." He tried to deny it. Tried to say he never thought she'd actually hurt me. But silence can be just as dangerous as violence. The police reopened Sarah's case. Linda's calm expression finally cracked when she learned that. As she was led away in handcuffs, she locked eyes with me. There was no apology in her stare. Only anger. And fear. That night, lying alone in a safe place, I realized something painful but powerful. The woman who pushed me wasn't the only one responsible. The man who ignored the truth had played his part too. And now, after years of being silenced, the truth was finally louder than them both. 6 months after the fall, I sat in a courtroom that felt colder than any hospital room I had been in. Linda sat at the defense table, dressed neatly, her hair perfect as always. From a distance, she looked like a harmless woman, but I knew better. I knew exactly what she was capable of. The judge's voice echoed through the room as the evidence was presented. First came the security footage. Played slowly, frame by frame. The moment her hands touched my back froze the courtroom into silence. I heard a few gasps behind me. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Then the medical records were shown. Doctors explained how close I had come to dying. How the delay in calling for help made my injuries far worse. Then came the stolen items. My jewelry, my memories, my past. Laid out like proof of years of control and manipulation. And finally, Sarah took the stand. She spoke calmly, but her hands trembled. She described her own fall. The same stares. The same excuses. The same words used to silence her. By the time she finished, there was no doubt left in the room. Linda was found guilty of attempted murder and theft. When the judge read the sentence, 15 years in prison, Linda's mask finally broke. She turned toward me. Her eyes filled with rage. But for the first time I wasn't afraid. Mark didn't fare much better. The messages between him and his mother were impossible to ignore. His refusal to act, his role in silencing two women. He lost his job, his reputation collapsed. The man who once told me I was imagining things now had to face the consequences of his silence. I filed for divorce the same week. There were no dramatic arguments. No shouting. Just paperwork. I kept the house. The same house where my life almost ended became the place where I took my life back. The first thing I changed was the staircase. Not because I feared it, but because I wanted to reclaim it. The old steps were removed and replaced with new ones. Stronger. Safer. The security cameras stayed. They weren't about fear anymore. They were reminders. I redecorated slowly. Every color was my choice. Every piece of furniture placed where I wanted it. For the first time, my home reflected me, not someone else's control. Linda's appeal was denied. Mark was sentenced to probation and mandatory counseling for his role in covering up the abuse. He tried to contact me once, leaving a long message filled with regret. I never replied. Sometimes silence is the strongest answer. Months later, Sarah and I met for coffee. We laughed about small things, favorite colors, silly shows, the freedom of choosing for ourselves. We talked about the past, but it didn't own us anymore. Together, we helped start a small support group for women dealing with abusive in-laws. Stories poured in. Women who thought they were alone. Women who were told they were too sensitive. Or imagining things. They weren't. One evening as I stood in my kitchen, the soft blinking of the security cameras caught my eye. I smiled. Those cameras had saved my life. They gave me proof when no one believed me. They gave me my voice back. I looked at my reflection in the window and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Peace. Not because I forgave, not because I forgot, but because I chose myself. In the end, my revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was surviving, it was telling the truth. And it was walking forward free, safe. And finally heard. My mother-in-law pushed me down the stairs. My husband said I tripped. What he didn't know, my security camera recorded everything.